that little spooky little riff, didn't we? I'm not sure who wrote it. I think it might have been Bart, mightn't it? I don't know. Very creepy music though. But what I wanted to talk about was music and the occult. Music and what people think are dark energies and forces and evil, right? What all occult means really is hidden, basically hidden knowledge. And I've been talking about blues and the occult side of the blues. I mean, if you look into blues history, a lot of the blues players believed in this stuff back in the day because they were African Americans, or Africans actually, that got took to America, and they'd been enslaved, and when they came over they had their own religious beliefs or own spirituality. And the African spirituality was called Vodun, and it became known as voodoo over in America. And obviously they wanted to practice their spiritual beliefs, but obviously the people that had enslaved them wouldn't let them because they thought it was paganistic and evil. And they forced them to practice Catholicism mainly. And so, being very clever, the Africans thought, we're not giving up our traditional beliefs, so what we'll do, we'll hide it behind Catholicism and kind of amalgamate it a little bit, you know. So basically, a lot of the Catholic priests are now associated with Vodun Loa, they're called, or the spirits of the voodoo world, right? And so therefore you've got this amalgamation of the Catholic Church and the African traditions. And this is where I think it leads to things like people thinking that blues musicians sold their soul to the devil when they didn't, right? Now I've got no doubt that Robert Johnson, who is the most famous blues musician who supposedly sold his soul to the devil at the Crossroads, which is a voodoo sort of thing. You go to a crossroads to invoke certain voodoo spirits to help you achieve what you want in life, you see. And I've no doubt that Robert Johnson was into all of that. I mean, just listen to his song lyrics. He sings about it. But he also plays on the Catholic side of it, using references to devils and hellhounds and all this sort of stuff. But basically, if he was a voodoo practitioner, he would have known that when he went to the crossroads, or if he did a ceremony which kind of represented going to the crossroads, he would have been invoking not the devil, but a person you might have heard of, or a spirit you might have heard of. I can't remember the TV programme, but most of you have probably heard of Papa Legba. He's got a few other different ways of saying his name, but he's associated with the Catholic saints Lazarus. If you don't know Lazarus, he's the guy that Jesus resurrected from the dead. And then Saint Anthony and Saint Peter obviously was the first pope according to the Catholic Church. And those saints are associated with Papa Legba. Well, Satan and Lucifer aren't saints, are they? But they are Catholic entities. But yeah, Legba, Papa Legba, who you would invoke at the crossroads to make sort of deals with to get what you wanted out of your life, had nothing to do with Satan, right? So if Robert Johnson did go to the crossroads and make a pact or a deal or something, it wasn't satanic, it wasn't devil worship, it was his own spiritual African belief where he invoked Papa Legba, asked him for assistance in what he wanted, and that was that, right? But because of a lot of people had become converted to Christianity and Catholicism, they saw the voodoo as paganistic and evil and devil worshipping sort of stuff, and said it was the devil's music, and that anyone that used voodoo in their practices was basically selling their soul to the devil. So I don't think Johnson did sell his soul to the devil. I think if he did anything, he just believed he'd done some sort of voodoo ritual which helped him do what he wanted to do. He did die at the age of 27, and he did die apparently crawling around the ground on all fours, screaming and howling like a dog, because I think the story goes he'd had an affair with a woman in this village or town where he was playing on and off, and the husband found out and poisoned him. And it kind of all ties in because Papa Legba is associated with dogs, and Robert Johnson died crawling around like a dog, apparently, according to the myths. But I don't know whether Papa Legba would want to destroy Robert Johnson. I mean, maybe that was part of the deal. You know, you can have the fame and the fortune, and well, he didn't so much get the fortune, but you can have the fame and be known as the greatest blues man. But you will have to pay a penalty for that, which is you die young in some sort of pain. You know, I mean, I'm not an expert on this by any means. I've researched it a bit, but what I mean, I want people to get away from the fact of this devil worshipping blues music, because it's not true. Not in my opinion, and I don't reckon in a lot of blues people's opinion, and I don't believe in a lot of voodoo practitioners' opinion, obviously. But obviously they had to hide their voodoo practices from the relevant people, so they started to use the names of the saints in regards to the spirits of the voodoo or vodun or whatever, you know, hoodoo in certain parts. And, you know, but there are these myths, aren't there, Faustian pacts of musicians and artists and stuff. I can't remember the most famous one, but there was a violinist, wasn't there? And then obviously Faust, wasn't it? I think it was Faust. And then and even in more recent times, you've got the they sold their soul for rock and roll. You can look that up on YouTube. And who was a very famous occultist in rock and roll? He doesn't even deny it. I don't think he ever did. He never spoke too much about it, but he doesn't deny it now. He's been in the Oxford Union talking about it, where Jimmy Page was heavily into the occult. He had an occult bookshop at one point. In fact, he might still have something to do with that. And he was into Aleister Crowley and sort of arcane, sort of, what do you call it? The more kind of scientific sort of magic, where they made it into like a science, right? And obviously he would have been interested in the voodoo side of the blues and how that related to more formal types of magic. And they do say Led Zeppelin done some sort of bargain themselves, or some sort of ritual or spell or something, and make of that what you will. But what I'm saying is music has long been associated with the light and dark forces, and it's all belief systems. Like before we had monotheism with the different religions of that, most religions were polytheistic and were in tribal communities, with tribal leaders being people like shamans and witch doctors and medicine men, and you know, I think the higher powers of the universe, I mean, a rose is a rose by any other name, and people used to be in touch with their spiritual sides in different ways, and it evolved as the human race evolved, and in modern times, I suppose because spiritually we're more developed and physically we're more developed, we've approached it all in a different way. But back in the day, we were more in tune with the world itself, and it was called animism, where everything has a spirit or a soul. You know, if there's a storm brewing, or there's a storm, the storm has a soul, or a river has a soul, or animals have all got souls, and the wind has got an essence, and you know, and we all interrelate, and that's what kind of shamanic stuff is, which is related to all the other tribal stuff like voodoo and any other stuff. So all I want to do is try and get people over this myth that it's, you know, because that's why your bands like AC/DC's like "Come on a highway to hell," and that's all how it all got associated with, you know, rock and roll, worship Satan, devils and all that, right? It's become a bit of a trendy sort of joke in a way, but it ain't no joke, man. The people that understand, and you know, that's what they do. But all Legba is, well, not all Legba. Legba is one of the most powerful voodoo deities, and he is the gatekeeper between this world and the other. He communicates with the lower, who communicate with, I forgot his name, I shouldn't forget his name, Bondi, the head god of the voodoo world, and that's all it is.